betrayed, broken, and left to die. But they made one fatal mistake. They thought exile would silence her. They thought the frozen ravine would swallow her whole. But Alara Quinn didn't scream as they dragged her across the ice. She didn't beg when they threw her into the abyss. She smiled. That smile haunted Alpha Marcus for years, because it wasn't defeat. It was a promise. What happens when the woman you destroy becomes the force that reshapes your entire world? Stay until the end to witness her transformation. Drop a like and comment where you're watching from. Let's build this pack together. The rope burned. Not the kind of burn that faded with time or healed with ointment. This was the friction-raw scrape of coarse hemp against wrists already bruised purple, dragging Alara Quinn across a landscape that didn't forgive weakness. Her knees slammed into jagged ice, her ribs screamed with each breath. Blood dotted the snow behind her like a trail of breadcrumbs, except no one was coming to save her. "Keep moving, traitor." The guard's voice was flat, professional. He'd done this before, probably. Dragged condemned wolves to their deaths and went home to dinner without a second thought. His grip on the rope tightened as Alara's boot caught on a buried root, and she went down hard, face first into snow that tasted like iron and dirt. She didn't cry out. That seemed to irritate him more than if she had. "I said move." Alara pushed herself up on shaking arms, her vision swimming. The world tilted sideways, white snow, gray sky, dark pines blurring together. Her wolf was silent inside her. Had been silent for months now. That absence felt like losing a limb, like breathing with half a lung. She'd grown used to it, the same way you grow used to chronic pain. It just was. Behind her, the rest of the Crescent Ridge pack stood in a loose formation, watching. Not all of them met her eyes, some shuffled their feet. A few of the younger wolves looked uncomfortable, like they wanted to protest but lacked the spine for it. Alpha Marcus Hale stood at the front, arms crossed over his broad chest, expression carved from granite. He'd been handsome once. Alara remembered thinking that when she first joined the pack 5 years ago. Strong jaw, clear blue eyes, the kind of presence that filled a room. Now all she saw was a coward dressed in authority. "You brought this on yourself," Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the frozen clearing. "Theft, conspiracy, attempted murder of a pack member." Alara turned her head just enough to look at him. Her left eye was swollen shut, but the right one worked fine. She let him see everything in that gaze: contempt, exhaustion, and something that might have been pity. "You don't even believe that," she said. Her voice came out raspy, wrecked from screaming during the interrogation, or what they'd called an interrogation. Torture had a nicer ring to it, apparently, when you dressed it up in legal language. Marcus's jaw tightened. "The evidence was planted." Alara spat blood into the snow. "We both know it. Question is whether you're lying to them or just to yourself." A ripple went through the crowd. Nervous glances exchanged. The guard yanked the rope hard enough to make Alara stumble, but she caught herself, refused to go down again. "Enough!" Marcus's command cracked like a whip. He stepped forward, boots crunching through ice, until he stood close enough that Alara could smell the coffee on his breath. Expensive coffee. Imported, while half the pack rationed supplies through the winter. "You were weak when you came to us. We gave you a home, protection, a place in the hierarchy." "A place at the bottom," Alara corrected. "Doing the jobs no one else wanted, eating last, sleeping in the cold cabin while your inner circle got heated rooms, because you never proved yourself worthy of more." There it was. The truth underneath all the pageantry. Alara had always been other, too small, they said, too quiet. Her wolf too subdued to be useful in hunts or border patrols. When supplies went missing, high-quality medical supplies, the kind that could be sold for serious money in human markets, of course suspicion fell on her. The outsider. The weak link. Never mind that she'd been in the healer's cabin the night of the theft, sedated after another inexplicable collapse. Never mind that 3 wolves saw her there. Saw, but didn't speak up during the trial, because Marcus had already decided her guilt, and contradicting an alpha was a quick way to join the accused. "The rift kills quickly," Marcus continued, addressing the pack now, playing to his audience. "She won't suffer long. It's more mercy than she deserves." The rift. Alara's gaze drifted past Marcus to the dark slash in the landscape behind him. From here it looked like a scar, a wound in the earth that never healed. The broken rift, they called it. A ravine so deep you couldn't see the bottom, so cold that wolves who fell in froze before they hit ground. Stories said it was cursed, that the spirits of the dead howled in its depths. Stories also said no one survived it. Marcus was counting on that. "Any last words?" he asked, turning back to her. "A formality. A performance." Elara met his eyes with her one good eye and smiled. It wasn't a big smile, barely a curve of split lips, but something in it made Marcus take an involuntary step back, made the guard's grip falter on the rope. "You're going to regret this," Elara said quietly. "Not today. Maybe not even next month. But you will." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Her smile widened, just a fraction. Blood stained her teeth. "You think getting rid of me solves your problem. But I'm not your problem, Marcus. Your problem is coming, and when it arrives, you're going to wish you'd listened." For a heartbeat, just one, doubt flickered across the Alpha's face. Then his expression hardened, and he nodded to the guard. "Throw her in." The guard didn't drag her the last 50 yards. He hauled her up by the rope, another wolf joining him, and they carried her between them like a sack of grain. Elara didn't fight. What would be the point? Her wolf was gone, swallowed by whatever poison had been slowly killing her these past months. Her body was wrecked. Fighting now would just mean more pain before the inevitable. The edge of the rift appeared beneath her, a black mouth opening to swallow the world. Wind howled up from its depths, carrying the smell of old ice and older death. The guard swung her once, twice, building momentum. On the third swing, they let go. Elara fell. The wind stole her breath. The world spun. Sky, rock, darkness, sky again. She slammed into an outcropping 20 feet down, felt ribs crack like dry kindling, bounced, fell again. Hit another ledge. This time something in her leg gave way with a wet pop that she felt more than heard. Then she was in free fall. Actual free fall. Nothing but air and the distant scream of wind, and the certain knowledge that the next impact would be the last. She hit snow, not rock. Snow. Deep, soft, impossible snow that shouldn't exist this far down, where sunlight never reached and ice ruled everything. Elara sank into it like a grave, white powder filling her mouth and nose, and for a moment she thought maybe this was worse, drowning in snow instead of splattering on stone. Then the world went dark, and she stopped thinking at all. Time became meaningless. Elara drifted in and out of consciousness like a swimmer struggling against a riptide. Sometimes she was aware of cold. Brutal, absolute cold that turned her bones to ice and made her muscles seize. Other times she felt heat, impossible heat that had to be fever burning through her wrecked body. Once, she was certain she heard voices. Deep voices. Male. Speaking a language that sounded almost familiar, but not quite. Words she should know, but couldn't grasp. She tried to open her eyes, tried to call out, but her body refused orders. She was a passenger in a vehicle with no driver. The darkness took her again. When she finally actually surfaced, awareness clicking into place like a key in a lock, the first thing she registered was warmth. Real warmth. Not fever, not delirium. Elara's eyes cracked open. Firelight danced across an unfamiliar ceiling. Stone, she thought. Carved stone, smooth and intentional, not the rough walls of a cave. Her body felt distant, wrapped in something thick and soft. Furs, maybe. Blankets. She tried to sit up. Pain detonated through her torso like a grenade, and she gasped, the sound turning into a choked cough that brought tears to her eyes. "Don't move." The voice came from her left, male, calm, with an authority that expected obedience. Elara's head turned fractionally, and she caught sight of him, tall. That was the first impression. Even sitting, he dominated the space. Dark hair pushed back from a face that could have been carved from the same stone as the ceiling, all hard angles and sharp edges. His eyes, though, those stopped her, silver, not gray, not pale blue. Silver, like moonlight on water, and just as unsettling. He leaned forward, and Elara's instinct screamed at her to retreat, to run, even though running was impossible with her body broken as it was. "You've been unconscious for 3 days," he said. "Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, severe hypothermia. By all rights, you should be dead. Alara swallowed. Her throat felt like sandpaper. Disappointed? One dark eyebrow arched. Should I be? Most people are when I keep breathing. Something that might have been amusement flickered in those silver eyes. I'm not most people. That much was obvious. Everything about him radiated power. Not the performative kind that Marcus wielded like a club, but something deeper. Fundamental. The kind of power that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. Who are you? Alara managed. Kyle Draven. The name hit her like cold water. Kale Draven. The Draven. Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of 6 packs, the wolf that other alphas whispered about in wary tones. Stories painted him as brutal, merciless, a force of nature that crushed opposition and took what he wanted. Alara's next question came out as a whisper. Why am I alive? Kyle stood, and the movement was fluid, predatory. He crossed to the fire, adding wood with the same precise economy of motion. When he spoke again, his back was to her. Because you're mine. The world tilted. What? You heard me. He turned and the firelight caught his face, throwing shadows that made him look ancient, eternal. The moment I pulled you from that snow, I knew. You're my mate, Alara Quinn. Her name in his mouth sounded like a claiming. That's impossible, Alara said, her heart hammered against her broken ribs. I can't. Feel it? Kyle crossed back to her, moved with that same predatory grace. He crouched beside the bed, bringing them to eye level, and Alara couldn't look away from that silver gaze. No, you wouldn't. Not yet. Not yet? His hand moved, and she flinched, but all he did was brush hair back from her face with surprising gentleness. His fingers came away stained with dried blood. You've been poisoned, Kyle said quietly. For months, maybe longer. Something in your system suppressing your wolf, dampening your senses, making you weak. The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through everything Alara thought she knew. She struggled to process it. No, I've always been... Weak? Kale's voice held an edge now. Is that what they told you? What you told yourself? Alara's throat closed. Because yes, that was exactly what she'd believed. What everyone believed. Alara the weak, Alara the burden. Alara who couldn't hunt, couldn't fight, could barely shift on the full moon. The poison's working its way out of your system now, Kyle continued. Give it time. You'll feel the difference. Why? The question burst out of her. Why would someone poison me? I'm nobody. I don't matter. Kyle's expression hardened. You matter to someone. Enough that they wanted you controlled, contained. His hand moved to her wrist, fingers circling the bruises there. Enough that when control wasn't sufficient, they tried to kill you. Marcus. Had to be Marcus. Or someone in his inner circle. But why? What could she possibly... I need you to rest, Kyle said, releasing her wrist. Your body's been through trauma. Healing takes time, even for wolves. Wait. Alara tried to sit up again, and again the pain drove her back. You can't just... I don't understand any of this. Mates? Poison? Why do you even care? Kale looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost gentle, but underneath it ran currents of steel. Because you smiled. What? When they threw you into the rift, I was tracking a rogue threat near Crescent Ridge territory, heard the commotion, arrived in time to see your former pack condemn you. His eyes never left hers. And you smiled at them. Not afraid, not broken, defiant. Alara remembered. That last smile, that final fuck you to Marcus and his certainty. That smile told me everything I needed to know, Kyle continued. You're a survivor, a fighter. Even when they'd beaten you down, poisoned you, taken everything, you didn't break. That kind of strength is rare, Alara. I won't waste it. He stood again, moved toward the door. Someone will bring food in an hour. Eat what you can, sleep when you need to. There are guards outside, but they're for your protection, not your imprisonment. You're safe here. Where is here? Kale paused at the threshold, looked back over his shoulder. Shadow Peak, the northern fortress. My home. His mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. And now yours. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Alara was alone with the firelight and her shattered body and the impossible weight of everything she'd just learned. Poisoned. Someone had been poisoning her. She stared at the ceiling, tracing the patterns in the stone, and felt something inside her, something that had been dormant for so long she'd forgotten it existed, begin to stir. Her wolf. Distant, weak. But there. Alara closed her eyes and for the first time in months let herself hope. Recovery was not a straight line. Some days Alara could sit up without gasping. Other days, breathing hurt. Kale visited irregularly, sometimes twice a day, sometimes not for days. When he came, he brought questions. Who had access to your food at Crescent Ridge? Everyone, I guess. We ate communally. Your water? There was a well near my cabin. Who else used it? Just me. It was kind of far from the main compound. Each answer seemed to mean something to him, pieces of a puzzle she couldn't see. He never pushed when she grew tired, never demanded more than she could give. But his eyes, those unsettling silver eyes, tracked everything, every wince, every hesitation. On the 6th day, a woman came. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with white blonde hair braided in intricate patterns and eyes the color of honey. She moved like water, fluid and certain, and the air around her seemed to hum with energy. I'm Vera, she announced, setting a leather bag on the table beside Alara's bed. The king asked me to examine you. I'm a healer, before you ask. And no, you don't get to say no. Alara blinked. I wasn't going to... Good. Shirt off. Excuse me? Vera's smile was sharp. I need to see the damage, unless you'd prefer Kyle do it. He offered, but I figured you'd rather... Shirt's fine. Alara fumbled with the buttons. Her fingers still didn't work quite right, trembling with weakness. Vera watched for exactly 3 seconds before stepping in to help, her touch clinical and efficient. When the shirt fell away, Vera's expression shifted. The humor drained from her face, replaced by something harder. Fuck, she said quietly. Alara looked down at herself. The bruises had faded to yellow-green, but the pattern remained. Rings around her ribs where the rope had held her, darker spots where boots had connected. Lower, across her stomach, silvery lines that might have been old scars, or might have been something else. Vera's fingers traced those lines, feather light. How long? She asked. How long what? How long were they poisoning you? Alara shook her head. I don't know. I started getting sick about 8 months ago. Dizzy spells, weakness. They said it was stress, or maybe something wrong with my wolf. There's nothing wrong with your wolf. Vera's voice was flat. There's everything wrong with what they did to her. She pulled a small vial from her bag, uncorked it, and the smell that wafted out was sharp, herbal. This is going to hurt. What? Vera tipped the vial, and 3 drops of clear liquid fell onto Alara's stomach. The pain was immediate and absolute. Alara screamed, couldn't help it, as fire erupted under her skin. She could feel it spreading, burning through her veins like acid, and somewhere deep inside her wolf was howling, howling, howling. Then it stopped. Alara collapsed back against the pillows, gasping. Sweat soaked her skin. Her heart hammered. What the fuck? She wheezed. Moonsbane extract, Vera said, corking the vial. Highly diluted, or you'd be dead. It reacts to residual poison in the bloodstream. She pointed to Alara's stomach, where the silvery lines had turned vivid red, angry and raised. That's your roadmap. Every place the poison concentrated. Alara stared. The lines formed patterns, clusters over her liver, her kidneys, threading through her intestines. Deliberate, systematic. Someone knew what they were doing, Vera continued. This wasn't accidental contamination. This was targeted biological warfare, designed to cripple your wolf without killing you outright. Her honey eyes met Alara's. Question is, why go to that much trouble? Why not just kill you? Maybe they tried, Alara said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. At the end. No. Vera shook her head. If they wanted you dead, you'd be dead. This, she gestured to the red lines. This was about control. about keeping you weak enough to not be a threat, but alive enough to... She trailed off, frowning. Enough to what? I don't know yet. Vera began packing her bag. But I'm going to find out. In the meantime, you need to understand something. That poison suppressed your wolf for months. As it leaves your system, she's going to come back, fast. And she's going to be pissed. Ilara's laugh came out harsh. Great. Anything else? Yeah. Vera paused at the door. Kyle wasn't lying. You are his mate. I can smell it on both of you, even if you can't feel it yet. When your wolf fully returns, the bond's going to hit like a freight train. Prepare yourself. Then she was gone, and Ilara was alone again with her thoughts, and the burning red lines on her skin, and the growing certainty that nothing about her life had been what she thought. Well, on the 10th day, Ilara stood. It took 3 tries. The first 2 ended with her on the floor, cursing. But the third, she made it. Vertical. Shaking like a newborn deer, but vertical. The door opened. Kyle stepped through, took one look at her, and stopped. You should be resting. I've been resting for 10 days. Ilara's legs trembled, but she locked her knees, refused to fall. I need to move. Need to... She didn't have words for what she needed. Just the overwhelming urge to be upright, to prove she could still function. Kale crossed the room in 3 strides. For a moment she thought he'd push her back into bed, but instead he offered his arm. Stubborn, he said. You say that like it's a bad thing. His mouth quirked. I say it like it's a fact. Come on, if you're going to insist on standing, at least let me help you not fall on your face. Ilara hesitated, then took his arm. His skin was warm under her hand, and the moment they touched, something sparked. Not physical, not quite, but there. Present. A recognition that went deeper than thought. The mate bond. Had to be. Kale felt it too. She could tell by the way his eyes darkened, pupils expanding. Walk? He suggested, his voice rougher than before. They made it 5 steps before Ilara's legs gave out. Kyle caught her, easy as breathing, and lowered her into a chair by the fire instead of back to bed. A small victory, but she'd take it. Tell me about Crescent Ridge, Kyle said, settling into the chair across from her. Your alpha, Marcus Hale. Ilara's hands curled into fists on her lap. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with how you joined his pack. So she told him about being a lone wolf, packless and wandering, when she stumbled across Crescent Ridge's territory. About Marcus offering sanctuary, a place to belong. About the 5 years she spent there, trying to earn her keep, trying to fit into a hierarchy that never quite made room for her. Kael listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. He isolated you, he finally said, kept you separate from the pack core, gave you tasks that prevented bonding, classic manipulation. Or I was just weak and couldn't keep up. You weren't weak. Kael's voice held absolute certainty. You were poisoned. There's a difference. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Who prepared your food? There was a rotation, different pack members each week. Who had access to your cabin? Anyone, technically. I didn't lock it. Who gave you medical treatment when you got sick? Ilara frowned. The pack healer. Sarah. She... The memory surfaced, sharp and sudden. She always gave me tea, said it would help with the dizziness. Kael's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. Danger, coiled and ready. This Sarah, he said carefully. Was she part of Marcus's inner circle? His sister. Fuck. Kael stood, paced to the fire. That's how they did it. Medical treatment you couldn't refuse from someone you had no reason not to trust. The pieces clicked together in Ilara's mind, forming a picture she didn't want to see. Sarah, kind Sarah with her gentle hands and concerned questions. Sarah who always had time for the weak Omega, who never made her feel like a burden. Sarah who'd been poisoning her for months. Why? Ilara's voice cracked. I was nobody. I had nothing. Why go to that much trouble? Kael turned from the fire and his expression was grim. Because you had something they wanted to suppress. Something they were afraid of. He crossed back to her, crouched so they were eye level. Vera's working on identifying the exact poison, But the pattern suggests they were targeting something specific in your bloodline, a trait, a power. I don't have power, I'm just Elara. His hand covered hers, warm and solid. Stop. Stop believing what they told you. You survived poison that should have killed you. You survived being thrown into the rift. You survived because you're stronger than any of them understood. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. And when your wolf comes back fully, they're going to realize just how badly they fucked up. Elara wanted to believe him, wanted to believe she was more than the worthless Omega Crescent Ridge had named her. But belief required evidence, and all she had were broken bones and red lines and the fading ghost of a wolf inside her. I need air, she said suddenly. Is there a window, or... Kael stood, moved to the far wall, and pulled back a heavy curtain Elara hadn't noticed. Glass reflected firelight, a window, massive, overlooking... Elara's breath caught. Mountains. Endless mountains, peaks stabbing at a sky so clear and dark it looked like velvet. Stars scattered across that darkness like diamonds, more stars than she'd ever seen. And below them, far below, a valley where lights glimmered. A settlement. A town. Shadow Peak territory, Kael said. 12,000 wolves, 5 towns, 3 mountain ranges. He glanced at her. Your territory now, if you choose to claim it. If she chose. As if she had any real choice. As if being someone's mate meant she belonged anywhere. But looking out at those mountains, those stars, Elara felt something shift inside her. The stirring she'd felt before, stronger now. Her wolf, rising from months of suppression, shaking off the chains. And for the first time since falling into the rift, Elara Quinn smiled. Not the defiant fuck you smile she'd given Marcus. This was different. This was a promise she made to herself. They'd tried to break her, failed. They'd tried to kill her, failed. Now she was going to show them exactly what they'd created. 3 weeks at Shadow Peak changed nothing and everything. Elara's ribs healed. The bruises faded from purple to yellow to gone. She could walk the length of her room without collapsing, could climb the stairs to the fortress's upper levels without her lungs screaming. Physical recovery, Vera called it. Surface healing. But underneath, something else was happening. Her wolf was waking up. Not gently, not gradually. It was like watching something claw its way out of a grave, violent, desperate, furious. Elara would be sitting at the window watching snow fall over the mountains, and suddenly she'd taste blood in her mouth that wasn't there, feel phantom claws extending from fingers that remained human, hear growls that originated from inside her own chest. It's normal, Vera said, the 5th time Elara summoned her in a panic. You've been suppressed for months. Your wolf's catching up on all the aggression she couldn't express. It doesn't feel normal. It feels like I'm losing my mind. You're not. You're just finally meeting yourself. Vera packed her bag with brisk efficiency. Give it another week. The worst should pass. But a week came and went, and the episodes intensified. Elara started avoiding people. Not difficult. Most of Shadow Peak's wolves kept their distance anyway, watching her with wary curiosity whenever she ventured into common areas. The king's mate, they called her. Said it in whispers, like the title was either sacred or cursed, no middle ground. Kael noticed her withdrawal. Of course he did. The man noticed everything. You haven't left your room in 3 days, he said, appearing in her doorway on a gray morning that looked identical to every other gray morning. That stops now. Elara looked up from the book she'd been pretending to read. Excuse me? You heard me. He stepped inside, and the room immediately felt smaller. Kael had that effect. His presence seemed to compress space, demand attention. Get dressed. Something warm. We're going out. That wasn't a request. Elara's spine stiffened. I'm not one of your soldiers you can just order around. No, Kael agreed, moving to stand by the window. You're my mate, which means I get to call you on your bullshit when you're hiding. He glanced at her over his shoulder. You've been isolating, spiraling. I've given you space to heal, but space becomes avoidance if left unchecked. Heat crawled up Elara's neck. I'm not avoiding anything. Your wolf's scaring you. The words hit like a slap. Elara's mouth opened, closed. Because yes, that was exactly it. The rage that bubbled up at random moments, the violent urges she didn't understand, the feeling that something massive and uncontrollable was coiled inside her chest, waiting to break free. "She's supposed to be me," Elara said quietly. "My wolf. Part of me. But she feels like a stranger." "Because she is a stranger." Kale turned fully now, arms crossed. "You've never met the real version. Only the suppressed, dampened shadow they let you have." His expression softened fractionally. "It's terrifying, I know, but hiding from her won't make it easier. You need to run." "Run?" "Shift. Let her out in a controlled environment before she forces her way out in an uncontrolled one." He headed for the door. 20 minutes. Courtyard. "Don't make me come back." Then he was gone, and Elara was left staring at empty air and contemplating whether she could actually shift without losing her mind entirely. She made it to the courtyard in 15 minutes out of spite. Kale was waiting, already stripped to the waist despite the cold, his skin marked with scars that told stories Elara didn't know yet. 4 other wolves stood with him, 2 men, 2 women, all watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright skepticism. "This is your escort," Kyle said without preamble. "They'll run with us. Keep to the perimeter. Make sure nothing goes wrong." One of the men, tall and dark-haired with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, snorted. "Babysitting duty? Fantastic." "Shut up, Garrett," one of the women said. She was built like a brick wall, all muscle and sharp angles, her blonde hair pulled into a severe braid. "The king gave an order." "The king gave us a liability." Garrett's eyes raked over Elara with open disdain. "She can barely walk without shaking. You really think she can shift, much less keep up?" Elara's hands clenched into fists. The rage that had been simmering under her skin flared hot and immediate. "I can hear you," she said, voice tight. "In case you forgot." Garrett smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Good. Then hear this. You being the king's mate doesn't mean shit if you can't pull your weight. This pack doesn't coddle weakness." "That's enough." Kale's voice cracked like a whip, and Garrett's smile vanished. "You question her again, and you'll answer to me. Clear?" Garrett's jaw worked, but he nodded. "Clear." The other 3 wolves looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Great. Elara had been at Shadow Peak less than a month and already had enemies. New record. Kale turned to her, and his expression gentled in a way that made her chest ache. "Ignore him. Focus on your shift. Don't fight it. Don't force it. Just let it happen." Easy for him to say. He probably shifted as easily as breathing, but Elara closed her eyes, reached for that furious presence inside her chest, and let go. The shift hit like lightning. One moment she was human, standing in snow with cold burning her bare feet. The next, she was folding, bones restructuring, muscles tearing and reforming, skin erupting into fur. It should have hurt. Every shift she remembered hurt, slow, grinding, exhausting. This was instant. This was power. Elara hit the ground on 4 legs, and the world exploded into sensation. Smells, pine, snow, wolf musk, blood from a kill miles away. Sounds, heartbeats, wind through trees, something small burrowing under snow. Colors shifted. Blues and greens muted, but movement stood out in sharp relief. And size. She was big, bigger than she'd ever been before. Her shoulders came nearly to Kyle's chest, and when she looked down at her paws, they were massive, tipped with claws that could shred flesh. "Holy shit," someone breathed. Elara's head swung toward the voice, the blonde woman staring with wide eyes. "She's huge," the woman continued. "I've never seen an Omega that size." "Because she's not an Omega," Kale said. He'd shifted too. A black wolf that dwarfed even Elara, his silver eyes gleaming in the weak sunlight. His voice came through the pack link, clear and resonant. "She never was." Elara wanted to ask what he meant, but her wolf was already moving, restless energy demanding release. She took 3 steps, then 5, then she was running. The world became a blur of white and gray. Trees flashed past. Wind bit at her face. Her muscles burned with exertion, but it was good burn, clean burn, nothing like the weakness that had plagued her for months. She felt strong, fast, dangerous. Behind her, the others followed. She could hear them, feel them through whatever pack connection existed here. Kale stayed close, matching her pace easily. The others spread out in a loose formation, guarding flanks. Except Garrett. He pulled alongside her, bigger than the 2 women but smaller than Elara, and his presence radiated challenge. Through the pack link, His voice was a snarl. "Let's see what you've got, princess." Then he was ahead, running full out, clearly expecting her to fall behind. Ilara's wolf snarled, and before she could think about it, she was chasing, faster, harder. Her legs ate up ground, powerful strides carrying her past Garrett like he was standing still. She heard his surprise, his scramble to catch up, and something vicious in her chest sang with satisfaction. "Ilara, slow down!" Kael's command rang through the link. "You're not ready for—" She ignored him, couldn't hear him over the roaring in her ears. The absolute joy of movement, of strength, of being more than the broken thing Crescent Ridge had made her. The forest opened into a clearing and Ilara put on a burst of speed, reveling in the way her muscles responded, the way the world seemed to slow down around her. She was invincible, unstoppable. Then her front leg buckled. She went down hard, tumbling through snow and dead leaves, momentum carrying her into a tree with enough force to crack bark. Pain exploded through her shoulder, old injury, incompletely healed, now screaming protest. The others caught up in seconds. Kael shifted mid-run, human again, naked and furious. "What the hell were you thinking?" He crouched beside her, hands running over her shoulder with surprising gentleness, despite his tone. "You've been bedridden for 3 weeks, and you decided to sprint like a fucking racehorse?" Ilara shifted back, the transformation sluggish now, exhausting. She lay in the snow panting, her shoulder throbbing. "I was fine," she managed. "You collapsed." "I was fine before that." Kael's laugh was sharp, humorless. "You're impossible." But his hands continued their examination, careful and thorough. "Nothing broken, but you strained the healing tissue. Congratulations." Garrett appeared at the clearing's edge, still in wolf form, radiating smug satisfaction. Even without words, the message was clear. "I told you so." Ilara wanted to snarl at him, wanted to shift and prove she could still run, still fight. But her body had other ideas, and when she tried to stand, her legs refused cooperation. "Easy." Kael's arm went around her waist, supporting her weight. "We're going back." "I can walk." "You can barely stand." "I said I can walk." They locked eyes, and for a moment neither moved. Then Kael's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. "Fine, but if you fall, I'm carrying you." It took 45 minutes to make the return journey. Ilara refused to shift again, stumbling through snow on 2 legs that felt like rubber. Her shoulders screamed with every step. Sweat soaked her clothes despite the cold. But she made it. Collapsed into a chair by the fire in her room and didn't move for 20 minutes, but she made it on her own feet. Vera arrived with ice and disapproval. "You're an idiot," she announced, pressing a freezing compress to Ilara's shoulder. "So I've been told. Running full out when you haven't shifted properly in months. What did you think would happen?" "I thought I'd be fine." "Well, you weren't." Vera's hands were efficient, clinical, wrapping bandages with practiced ease. "You tore the partially healed muscle tissue. Set your recovery back at least a week." Ilara's head dropped back against the chair. "Great." But Vera's tone changed slightly. "You also ran faster than anyone expected. Shifted bigger than you should be possible for someone your supposed rank." She tied off the bandage. "So maybe not a complete disaster." "I collapsed into a tree." "After outrunning Garrett, who's never been beaten in a sprint." Vera's smile was sharp. "He's been bragging about his speed for 2 years. You took him down a peg in under 5 minutes. I'd call that a win." Despite everything, Ilara felt her mouth curve. "Don't smile yet," Vera warned. "You've got bigger problems." The smile vanished. "What do you mean?" Vera pulled up a chair, her expression going serious. "I finished analyzing the poison residue in your system. Took me 3 weeks because the compound was sophisticated, layered, designed to break down slowly so it wouldn't show up in standard tests." Ilara's stomach clenched. "And?" "It's called silver shade. Rare, expensive, requires specific alchemical knowledge to create." Vera leaned forward. "It's also illegal under Northern Territory law, punishable by execution, because it's designed for one purpose, suppressing bloodline traits in high-ranking wolves." The words landed like stones. "High-ranking," Ilara repeated. "I'm not an Omega." "Yeah, we've established that was a lie." Vera's honey eyes bored into hers. Silvershade doesn't work on true omegas. It only affects wolves with dominant or rare bloodline markers. The fact that it worked on you means you have something in your genetics worth suppressing. Alara's mind spun. Like what? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But based on your size when shifted, your speed, the silver tone to your fur… Vera paused. There are stories. Old pack legends about silver wolves, rare bloodlines thought to be extinct. You think I'm, what, some kind of legendary wolf? Alara couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. I think you're something Marcus Hale was afraid of. Afraid enough to poison you for months rather than risk what you'd become without suppression. Vera stood. I need to run more tests, blood work, genetic screening, with your permission. Alara nodded numbly. Do it. After Vera left, Alara sat alone with the fire and the growing certainty that everything she'd known about herself was a carefully constructed lie. The door opened without knocking. Kael? Because of course it was. You should be resting, he said, but there was no heat in it. I've done nothing but rest for weeks. And then you tore your shoulder running like you had something to prove. He crossed to pour himself a drink from the decanter on the side table. What were you proving, exactly? That I'm not weak. Nobody who watched you run thinks you're weak. He took a sip, regarded her over the rim of the glass. But strength isn't just physical. You need to learn control. I had control. You panicked when Garrett challenged you and ran yourself into the ground. That's not control. He set the glass down. That's a wounded animal lashing out. The words stung because they were true. Alara had felt the panic, the desperate need to prove herself, and it had overridden common sense. He looked at me like I was nothing, she said quietly. Like I didn't belong here. Garrett's an asshole. Half the pack thinks he's an asshole. His opinion doesn't matter. It matters to me. Alara met Kael's eyes. Because he's right. I don't belong here. I'm not pack. I'm just my mate. Kael's voice was firm. You're my mate, which makes you part of this pack whether they like it or not. Whether you like it or not. I didn't ask for this. Neither did I. He moved closer, and the firelight caught the sharp planes of his face. But here we are. You can spend your energy fighting it, or you can accept it and figure out what comes next. Alara wanted to argue, wanted to push back against the presumption that she'd just slot into place in his world. But exhaustion weighed heavy, and her shoulder throbbed, and the fight drained out of her. What comes next? She asked. Kael's expression shifted. In 3 days, there's a council meeting, representatives from all 6 packs under Northern Territory jurisdiction. They gather quarterly to handle disputes, discuss policy, coordinate resources. What does that have to do with me? They've heard rumors about you, about me claiming a mate. His jaw tightened. Some are skeptical. Of course they are. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. And I need them to see that. He held her gaze. I need you at that meeting. Alara's stomach dropped. You want me to what? Stand there while they judge whether I'm worthy? I want you to stand there and remind them that you survived what should have killed you, that you're stronger than they assumed. So, his voice softened. I know it's asking a lot, but I can't protect you from politics forever. Better they meet you on our terms than ambush us later. He wasn't wrong. Alara knew enough about pack dynamics to understand that hiding would only feed speculation, make her seem weak. But the thought of facing a room full of alphas, all of them watching, judging. Will you be there? She asked. Every second. That helped, marginally. Okay, Alara said. 3 days. I'll be ready. Kael's smile was brief but genuine. Good. Now rest. Actual rest this time. Not your version where you plot ways to prove yourself. He left, and Alara was alone again. 3 days. She looked down at her bandaged shoulder, felt the ache in her muscles, the exhaustion that went deeper than physical. 3 days to figure out how to face a council of alphas who already thought she was worthless. 3 days to become someone worth standing beside a king. The wolf inside her stirred, and for once it didn't feel like rage. It felt like determination. The next morning, Alara started training. Not running. Her shoulder made that impossible, but there were other ways to build strength. She found a quiet corner of the fortress, a covered courtyard that saw little traffic, and began with basics. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretches that pulled at healing tissue but didn't tear it. She made it through 15 minutes before her arms gave out. Pathetic, she muttered, lying on cold stone. I've seen worse. Alara's head snapped up. A woman stood at the courtyard entrance, the blonde from the run, the one built like a wall. Up close, she looked even more intimidating, her arms corded with muscle, a scar running from her temple to her jaw. Can I help you? Alara asked, climbing to her feet. Name's Raya, captain of the King's Guard. She moved into the courtyard with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned her right to occupy space. Heard you were training. Trying to? Doing a shit job of it. Ria's smile took the sting from the words. Your form's decent, but you're favoring your left side, overcompensating for the shoulder. Alara's defenses rose. I'm managing. You're surviving. There's a difference. Ria crouched, demonstrating proper positioning. You want to manage, you need to relearn balance. Distribute weight evenly, even when it hurts. Why do you care? Ria straightened, met Alara's eyes. Because you're the king's mate, which means when someone comes for him, they'll come for you first. And I'm not interested in scraping your corpse off the stones because you couldn't defend yourself. Brutal honesty. Alara could work with that. Show me, she said. They trained for an hour. Ria was merciless, correcting every misstep, pushing Alara past the point of comfort into actual pain. But she also explained the why behind each movement, the strategy, the purpose. When they finished, Alara could barely lift her arms. Same time tomorrow, Ria said, and don't slack off. I'll know. She left, and Alara stood in the courtyard feeling like she'd been hit by a truck, but also strangely energized. Someone was willing to train her. Actually train her, not coddle or dismiss. She'd take it. The pattern repeated over the next 2 days, morning training with Ria, afternoon walks to rebuild stamina, evening studying maps of Northern Territory that Kael provided, learning pack names and borders and political alliances. The night before the council meeting, Vera returned with test results. Sit down, she said, which was never a good sign. Alara sat. Vera spread papers across the table, charts, genetic sequences, data that meant nothing to Alara. Your bloodline markers are off the charts, Vera said without preamble. Dominant alpha genes, hybrid vigor indicators, and, she paused, traces of something I've only seen in historical records. Silver wolf lineage. Alara's breath caught. You're serious? Completely. Silver wolves were apex predators, rare bloodline that produced some of the strongest alphas in history. They were hunted to near extinction 3 centuries ago because other packs feared their power. And you think I'm descended from that line? Yes. Vera's expression was grave, which means Marcus Hale knew, or suspected, and decided you were too dangerous to let develop naturally. The room felt too small suddenly, too hot. Why not just kill me, Alara asked, if I was that much of a threat? Because killing you would have raised questions, especially if you had allies, family, anyone who might investigate. Vera gathered the papers. But slow poisoning? That looks like natural weakness. No one questions an Omega who can't shift properly. Alara's hands clenched. He stole years from me. He tried to steal your future. Vera's voice was hard. Don't let him. Tomorrow, you walk into that council and show them exactly what he was afraid of. After Vera left, Alara stood at the window, watching snow fall over dark mountains, and felt the weight of expectation settle on her shoulders like a physical thing. Silver wolf, apex predator. She didn't feel like either. She felt like a woman who'd spent months believing she was worthless, now being told she was legendary. The disconnect was dizzying. You're spiraling again, Kael's voice. She hadn't heard him enter. Just thinking, Alara said. Dangerous activity. He joined her at the window, and for a moment they stood in silence, watching snow. Vera told me about the test results. Did she tell you I'm apparently part of an extinct bloodline that everyone was terrified of? She did. And you're not concerned that your mate is some kind of genetic anomaly? Kael's laugh was soft. Alara, I knew you were extraordinary the moment I saw you smile in the face of death. The genetics just confirm what I already knew. She turned to look at him. You don't know me. Not really. Then let me. His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw with unexpected gentleness. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. The council will test you, try to find weakness. But you don't have to face them alone. I've been alone my whole life. Not anymore. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Not unless you choose to be. The mate bond thrummed between them, stronger now than it had been weeks ago. Alara could feel it, a pull, a recognition, something that went deeper than thought or logic. She should pull away, keep distance, protect herself from more potential pain. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Kale's eyes held hers. But don't let it control you. Tomorrow, you walk in there as my equal. Not because of bloodline or genetics, but because you survived. You endured. And survival is its own kind of strength. His words settled something in her chest. Not all the anxiety, but enough. Thank you, Alara said. For what? For not treating me like I'm broken. Kale's smile was small but real. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. He left her at the window, and Alara watched snow fall until exhaustion finally drove her to bed. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. But standing there, feeling the echo of Kael's touch on her skin and the steady pulse of her wolf inside her chest, Alara thought maybe, just maybe, she could face it. The council chamber was designed to intimidate. Alara understood that the moment she stepped through the massive oak doors, vaulted ceilings stretched 30 feet overhead, supported by stone columns carved with wolves in various states of hunt and battle. Windows lined the eastern wall, letting in pale morning light that did nothing to warm the space. The floor was polished granite, and every footstep echoed like a judgment. 6 tables formed a semicircle facing a raised platform where Kael's throne sat. Actual throne. Black wood inlaid with silver, because apparently Northern Territory kings still did things the old way. 5 of those tables were already occupied. Alphas and their advisors, maybe 30 wolves total, all turning to watch as Alara entered. The weight of their stares was physical. Kael walked beside her, his presence a steady anchor, but he'd warned her this morning. Protocol demanded they sit separately during council sessions. He'd be on the platform. She'd be in the audience section, a chair reserved for honored guests. Honored. Right. More like on display. Rhea appeared at Alara's elbow, her voice low. Chin up, eyes forward, don't react to anything they say. Easy for you to say, Alara muttered. Is it? Rhea's scarred face showed nothing. I sat through my first council 7 years ago after killing 3 rogues in single combat. They still questioned whether I deserved my rank. This is pack politics. Everyone's a critic. Somehow that helped. Kael took his place on the platform, and the room shifted. Subtle straightening of spines, attention focusing. He commanded space the way gravity commanded planets, inevitable and absolute. Let's begin, Kael said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. We have territory disputes to settle, resource allocation to discuss, and a new mate to introduce. The voice came from the table on the far left, and Alara's stomach dropped as she recognized the speaker. Alpha Marcus Hale, her former alpha. The man who'd ordered her thrown into the rift. He looked exactly the same. Strong jaw, cold blue eyes, the kind of face that belonged on recruitment posters. But now Alara saw what she'd missed before. The cruelty in his smile, the calculation in his gaze. Marcus, Kael's tone could have frozen water. I wasn't aware Crescent Ridge had business with this council. We don't. Officially. Marcus stood, and 2 wolves flanked him, his beta and, Alara's vision tunneled, his sister Sarah, the healer. The woman who'd poisoned her for months with sympathetic smiles and herbal tea. Sarah wouldn't meet Alara's eyes. But when I heard rumors that the Northern King had claimed a mate, Marcus continued, I felt obligated to attend. To offer congratulations. The pause before that last word was deliberate. Kael's expression didn't change. Your concern is noted and unnecessary. Is it? Marcus's gaze slid to Alara, and she felt stripped bare under that look. Because the woman sitting in your honored guest chair is a convicted criminal, thief, conspirator. We exiled her for crimes against the pack. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The other alphas leaned together, whispering. Alara's hands clenched on the armrests of her chair hard enough that wood creaked. Your accusations were fabricated, Kael said, voice dangerous. Evidence planted, witnesses coerced. That's a serious claim. Another alpha spoke up. Woman in her 50s, gray streaking her dark hair, wearing authority like a second skin. Alpha Kael, you're saying another alpha falsified criminal charges? I'm saying exactly that, Alpha Moira. Marcus laughed, the sound echoing. You have proof of this fabrication, or just the word of a woman who'd say anything to avoid consequences? Alara's wolf snarled inside her chest. The rage was immediate and overwhelming, a tidal wave that threatened to drown rational thought. Her vision blurred at the edges. She could feel the shift trying to force its way out, could taste blood on her tongue. Ria's hand landed on her shoulder, gripped tight enough to bruise. A warning. Kyle stood, and the room went silent. I have proof. Analysis from my head healer identifying silvershade poisoning, a compound that requires specific alchemical knowledge and is illegal under Northern Territory law. His silver eyes locked on Marcus. Oh. Poisoning administered over months by your pack healer with your knowledge and consent. Sarah flinched. Marcus's expression didn't flicker. That's an interesting theory, Marcus said. But even if true, it doesn't erase her crimes. She stole from us, conspired with rogues, endangered pack members. Lies. Alara's voice cut through the chamber before she could stop herself. She stood, legs shaking but steady enough. All of it. You needed someone to blame when your inner circle got caught selling medical supplies on the black market. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapping, some demanding order, others shouting questions. Kael's hand came up, and silence fell like a guillotine blade. But the damage was done. Alara had spoken out of turn, broken protocol, confirmed every assumption that she didn't belong here. The accused speaks, Marcus said, and his smile was razor sharp. How convenient. Tell me, Alara, do you have proof of this alleged black market operation? Names, dates, transaction records? She didn't. Of course she didn't. She'd been too busy collapsing from poison to gather evidence. No, Alara admitted, and hated how small her voice sounded. But I know what I saw. Medical supplies disappearing, shipments that never arrived, your beta making trips to human territories without explanation. Marcus turned to the assembled council. Speculation and paranoia from a disgraced wolf. This is what the Northern King offers as his mate? A criminal with delusions? Watch your mouth. Kael's voice dropped to a growl that raised hackles across the room. You question her. You question me. Then perhaps, Alpha Moira said carefully, we should question both. She looked at Kael with something that might have been sympathy. You're asking us to accept serious accusations against a fellow Alpha based on medical analysis, but accusations run both ways. Alpha Marcus claims she committed crimes. You claim she was framed. Without concrete proof from either side, this becomes a matter of which Alpha's word we trust. The trap closed around Alara like teeth. She'd walked right into it. By speaking up, by defending herself, she'd turned this into a credibility contest between Kael and Marcus. And some of these alphas had known Marcus for years, had trade agreements with him, alliances. What was Kael to them? A king, yes, but also young, relatively new to power, and now claiming a mate with a criminal record. There's a simple solution, another alpha said, man with silver hair and a face like carved leather. Trial by combat. Let the accused prove her innocence the old way. Absolutely not, Kael said immediately. Why? Marcus leaned forward. Afraid your mate can't defend herself? I thought you said she was extraordinary. The challenge hung in the air. Alara's mind raced. Trial by combat was ancient, brutal, and technically still legal under traditional pack law. The accused fought their accuser or a designated champion. Winner decided guilt or innocence. It was also suicidal. She'd been poisoned for months, was still recovering from being thrown off a cliff, had maybe 3 weeks of real training with Ria. Marcus was a seasoned alpha with decades of combat experience. I'll fight, Alara heard herself say. No. Kael's command cracked like thunder. It's my right. Alara met his eyes across the chamber. Traditional law says the accused can choose trial by combat. I'm choosing. Kyle looked like he wanted to argue, but Alpha Moira spoke first. The law is clear. If she chooses combat, she's entitled to it. Her gaze moved to Marcus. Do you accept? Marcus smiled. Gladly. Although I think it's only fair to warn you, girl. I won't go easy just because you're the king's favorite. Alara's wolf surged, and this time she let it show. Let her eyes flash, let the growl rumble in her chest. I wouldn't want you to. The chamber dissolved into chaos. Alphas arguing about rules, about fairness, about whether this was wise. Kale descended from the platform, his fury palpable, but protocol prevented him from interfering once the challenge was issued. Rhea appeared beside Alara, her expression grim. Are you out of your mind? Probably. He's going to kill you. Maybe. Alara's hands weren't shaking anymore. The fear had burned away, leaving something colder behind. But at least I'll die fighting instead of being talked to death. That's not reassuring. Alpha Moira called for order, and slowly the room quieted. Trial by combat will commence in 1 hour. Standard rules apply. Shift allowed, weapons forbidden, fight to yield or incapacitation. She looked at Alara. You understand what you've committed to? I do. Then may fortune favor the righteous. They were dismissed to prepare. Kael caught Alara's arm the moment they left the chamber, pulling her into a side corridor where they had privacy. What the hell was that? His voice was low, controlled, which somehow made it more frightening than shouting would have been. He was going to destroy me anyway, Alara said. This way, I have a chance. You have no chance. Marcus has been fighting since before you were born. He's killed rogues, challenged rival alphas, survived wars. Kale's hands gripped her shoulders. He will tear you apart. Then I'll go down fighting. Alara met his gaze steadily. Better that than spending the rest of my life knowing I let him win without trying. This isn't about pride. It's about survival. Alara cut him off. If I don't fight, the council will always question me. Question you for choosing me. This way, win or lose, I prove I'm not afraid. Lose means dead, Alara. I know. Her voice softened. But I've been dead before. Survived that too. Kale's jaw worked. For a long moment he just looked at her, and she saw the war happening behind his eyes. The king who couldn't show weakness versus the mate who wanted to protect her. Finally, he exhaled. Rhea will help you prepare. She knows Marcus's fighting style, his tells. His hand came up, cupping her face. And if he kills you, I'll start a war that burns Crescent Ridge to ash. It shouldn't have been comforting. It was. Try not to start a war on my account, Alara said. Kael's smile was bleak. Too late. The next hour passed in a blur. Rhea drilled her on defensive positioning, on reading an opponent's body language, on where to strike for maximum damage. Vera appeared with some kind of herbal drink that tasted like dirt, but supposedly would help with pain and stamina. Don't try to match his strength, Rhea said for the 10th time. You can't. He's bigger, more experienced. Use your speed, your size advantage in wolf form. Make him chase you, wear him down. And if that doesn't work? Rhea's expression was grim. Go for the throat and hope you're faster. Not exactly inspiring. Too soon, guards came to escort her back to the council chamber. The space had been transformed. Tables pushed to the walls, creating a circular arena marked with white powder. Wolves packed the perimeter, maybe 100 now, word having spread through Shadow Peak. They watched her with expressions ranging from pity to anticipation. Marcus waited in the center of the circle, already stripped to the waist, his body a roadmap of scars. He looked relaxed, confident. Alara stepped into the circle, and the crowd noise faded to background static. Her focus narrowed to Marcus, to the way he shifted his weight, the slight favor he gave his left leg. Old injury, maybe, something to exploit. Alpha Moira stood at the circle's edge, her voice carrying. Trial by combat for Alara Quinn, accused of theft, conspiracy, and attempted murder by Alpha Marcus Hale of Crescent Ridge Pack. Fight continues until yield, unconsciousness, or death. Shifting is permitted. Do both parties understand? Yes, Marcus said. Yes, Alara echoed. Then begin. Marcus didn't wait. He shifted mid-lunge, a blur of brown fur and muscle that slammed into Alara before she could react. Teeth snapped inches from her throat. She rolled, felt claws rake her side, came up in a crouch, already shifting. Her wolf erupted out, silver fur and fury, and the crowd gasped. She heard it distantly, the shock at her size, her coloring, but there was no time to process. Marcus was on her again, using his weight to bear her down. She twisted, got her hind legs under his belly, and kicked hard. He flew back, crashed into wolves who scrambled out of the way. Alara didn't wait for him to recover. She lunged, going for the throat, but Marcus was faster than she expected. He rolled, and her teeth closed on shoulder instead of neck. Blood filled her mouth. Marcus howled and bucked, throwing her off. They circled, both bleeding now, both panting. Through the pack link, open during official challenges so witnesses could monitor, Marcus's voice was a snarl. "You've gotten stronger. Interesting." Alara didn't respond, saved her breath. They clashed again and again. Alara used her speed like Rhea taught her, darting in and out, landing hits but nothing decisive. Marcus was too experienced, anticipated her moves, countered with brutal efficiency. Her stamina started to flag. Weeks of recovery she'd pushed too hard too fast. Her lungs burned. Her legs trembled. Marcus sensed it. His attacks intensified, driving her back toward the circle's edge. The crowd pressed close, a wall of bodies and noise. Alara's vision tunneled. She was losing. Could feel it in her slowing reflexes, her ragged breathing. One more exchange and Marcus had her, jaws locked around her front leg, pulling her down. She thrashed, but his weight pinned her. His teeth moved toward her throat. This was it. This was how she died. Then something inside Alara snapped. Not broke. Snapped into place, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. Power flooded through her, raw and ancient, burning away exhaustion. Her wolf grew, muscles swelling, fur blazing silver white, bright enough to hurt eyes. And she was strong. Stronger than she'd ever been. Stronger than should be possible. Alara threw Marcus off like he weighed nothing. He hit the ground hard, shock radiating through the pack link. She was on him before he could stand, and this time when her jaws closed around his throat, there was no escape. She could kill him, so easily. One bite, and this would be over. Marcus went still, recognizing death. Through the link, his voice was strangled. "Yield." Alara held him there, teeth dimpling skin but not breaking it, and let him feel how close he was to dying. Let him understand that she was choosing to let him live. Then she released him and stepped back, shifting to human. The transformation left her naked and bloody in the center of a silent chamber, but she barely noticed. Her attention stayed locked on Marcus, who shifted back slowly, hand to his throat. "You yield." Alpha Moira's voice sounded distant. "I yield," Marcus confirmed. The chamber erupted. Cheering, shouting, the noise was deafening. But Alara heard none of it. She was watching Marcus's expression shift from shock to rage to something calculating. "Interesting," he said, loud enough to carry. "She wins the challenge, but proves my point. That kind of power, hidden all this time?" He looked at the assembled alphas. "What else is she hiding? What other secrets does the Northern King's mate carry?" The cheering died. Uncertainty rippled through the crowd. "She just fought you to a standstill, and you're still talking?" Rhea's voice cut through, and she stepped into the circle with a cloak that she wrapped around Alara's shoulders. "I'm saying what everyone's thinking," Marcus countered. "No Omega transforms like that. No Omega has that kind of strength. So what is she?" Alara felt eyes on her from every direction, calculating, afraid. She was saved from answering by Vera, who pushed through the crowd with the urgency of someone with bad news. "We have a problem," Vera said, addressing Kael, who'd descended from the platform. "Multiple problems. I need to speak with you and Alara. Now." Kael's expression darkened. "What kind of problems?" "The kind that suggests Marcus showing up today wasn't coincidence." Vera's honey eyes were grave. "Someone's been asking questions about Alara, about her bloodline, and about where to find components for Silvershade poison." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Who?" Kael demanded. "I don't know yet, but whoever they are, they're not working alone, and they're here, in Shadow Peak." Vera looked at Alara. The council meeting wasn't a trial, it was a distraction. Understanding hit Alara like ice water. They wanted me visible, occupied. While they did what? Ria's hand went to the knife at her belt. Vera's next words fell like stones into sudden silence. While they poisoned the northern water supply with enough silver shade concentrate to suppress every wolf in the territory. The chamber dissolved into chaos. Alphas shouting, guards mobilizing, wolves running for exits. But Alara stood frozen, watching Marcus's face. He looked surprised, genuinely surprised, which meant he wasn't behind this. Someone else was. Someone who wanted not just Alara suppressed, but an entire territory crippled. Kyle's hand found hers, gripped tight. We need to move. Now! But before they could take a step, every light in the chamber went out. Darkness. Complete and absolute. Then screaming started. And in the blackness, Alara heard a voice she didn't recognize, enhanced somehow, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. Hello, little silver wolf. I've been looking for you. Chaos in the dark was a special kind of hell. Bodies slammed into Alara from every direction. Screams ricocheted off stone walls. The cloak fell from her shoulders as someone crashed into her, and she hit the floor hard, elbows cracking against granite. Kale's hand was ripped from hers. She heard him shouting orders, heard Ria's voice cutting through panic, but the words were lost in the noise. Then teeth sank into her shoulder. Not wolf teeth. Human. Someone had bitten her, was dragging her backwards across the floor by flesh and muscle. Pain exploded white-hot, and Alara's wolf surged in response. She shifted without thinking, the transformation violent and instantaneous, and her attacker screamed as her expanding body threw them off. Emergency lighting flickered on, dim red bulbs that turned the chamber into something out of a nightmare. Wolves were fighting everywhere. Not organized combat, just blind panic and violence. Guards trying to restore order. Alphas protecting their own. Bodies on the floor, some moving, some not. And in the center of it all, standing perfectly still while carnage swirled around him, was a man Alara had never seen before. He was tall, lean, with silver hair despite looking maybe 40. His eyes were the color of mercury, reflecting the emergency lights in a way that seemed wrong. Unnatural. When he smiled, his teeth were too white, too sharp. There you are, he said, and though he spoke normally, his voice carried to every corner of the chamber. Some kind of amplification, magic maybe, or technology. The line blurred in wolf territories. The lost silver wolf. Do you know how long I've been searching? Kyle materialized from the chaos, already shifted, his black wolf massive and radiating fury. He placed himself between Alara and the stranger, hackles raised. The man laughed. Touching. The king plays protector. But you don't understand what she is, do you? He moved forward with fluid grace, and guards closed in from both sides. What she's capable of. Stay back, KL growled through the pack link, the command rolling out to every wolf present. The stranger ignored him. His hand moved in a gesture Alara couldn't follow, and two guards dropped like puppets with cut strings. Not dead. She could see them breathing, but unconscious, instantly. I'm not here to fight you, King Draven, the stranger said. I'm here for her, the culmination of a project decades in the making. His mercury eyes locked on Alara. Your bloodline was supposed to be extinct, hunted to nothing 3 centuries ago. But then I found records, hints that one line survived, hidden among lesser packs. Alara's wolf wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to bolt, but she held position. Shifted back to human despite her nakedness, despite the blood running down her shoulder from the bite. She needed words for this, not claws. Who are you? She demanded. Dr. Aldrich Thorne, though most know me as the architect. He spread his hands. I study wolf genetics, enhance them, perfect them. You make monsters, Vera's voice cut in. She'd appeared at the chamber's edge, medical bag in hand, face pale. I know your work. The rogue attacks 2 years ago. Those weren't natural rogues. They were your experiments. Aldrich's smile widened. Guilty, though I prefer enhanced specimens, and they would have been perfect if not for one flaw, instability. Aggression impossible to control. He looked at Alara again. But you, Silver Wolf bloodline with proper suppression and controlled development, you could be the foundation for a new breed, stronger, faster, obedient. I'm not a fucking science project, Alara snarled. On the contrary, you've been my project since birth, Aldrich pulled something from his coat, a tablet, screen glowing. He tapped, and an image appeared on the wall behind him, projected somehow. Medical records, genetic maps, and photos. A woman holding a newborn baby, both with distinctive silver-white hair. Alara's breath stopped. "Your mother," Aldrich said. "Leanna Quinn. Last known pure-blood silver wolf. She went into hiding after the final purge, changed her name, tried to live unnoticed among lesser packs." His expression hardened. "She refused my research offer, multiple times, so I took other measures." "You killed her." The words came out flat, emotionless, because Alara couldn't process the rage building in her chest. "She died in childbirth. Complications happen." Aldrich's tone suggested he didn't care either way. "But you survived. And I've been watching ever since, monitoring your development through paid informants, ensuring you ended up in packs where I could influence your growth." Pieces clicked together in Alara's mind with sickening clarity. "Marcus, you paid him to take me in, to suppress me." Alpha Hale was very accommodating once I explained the financial benefits, monthly payments in exchange for administering Silver Shade and keeping you isolated. Aldrich glanced at Marcus, who'd retreated to the chamber's edge, looking caught between fury and fear. Though he did get a bit zealous toward the end, exile wasn't part of the plan. Marcus's face went white. "You said she was dangerous. That suppression was necessary for pack safety." "I lied." Aldrich shrugged. "You were useful. Now you're not." He moved his hand again, that strange gesture, and Marcus collapsed. Not unconscious like the guards, his whole body seized, muscles locking, foam appearing at his lips. "Stop it!" Sarah screamed, rushing to her brother's side. She looked up at Aldrich with desperate eyes. "Please, I did what you asked. I gave her the poison exactly as prescribed, and you'll be compensated, after I take what I came for." Aldrich's attention returned to Alara. "You can come voluntarily, or I can force the issue. Either way, you're leaving with me." Kale's growl was pure menace. Around the chamber, guards who'd recovered from the initial chaos formed ranks, weapons drawn. But there was hesitation. Whatever Aldrich had done to drop wolves with a gesture, no one wanted to be next. Alara's mind raced. She was naked, unarmed, surrounded by enemies and uncertain allies. Aldrich clearly had abilities beyond normal wolves. Some kind of alchemical or magical enhancement. Fighting him directly would be suicide. But she'd survived suicide before. "Vera," Alara said quietly, not taking her eyes off Aldrich. "The silver shade in the water supply. How long until it takes effect?" "It's already starting. Wolves who drank this morning are reporting weakness, dizziness." "Can it be counteracted?" Vera hesitated. "Theoretically. The moon blossom extract I used on you would work, but we'd need massive quantities, more than we have." "Where does moon blossom grow?" "The northern ridges, but it's too dangerous to harvest at night, and we don't have time." "Yes, we do." Alara shifted, felt her silver wolf emerge with that same rush of power as before. Through the pack link, her voice rang clear. "Because I'm going to buy you that time." She lunged at Aldrich before anyone could stop her. He was ready, that gesture starting, but Alara was faster than before. Faster than she'd been even during the fight with Marcus. The power that had awakened during the trial blazed hotter now, burning away doubt and fear. She hit Aldrich like a freight train, teeth snapping for his throat. He blocked with an arm that should have torn like paper under her jaws, but didn't. His flesh was hard, unyielding, like biting into metal. Enhanced. The bastard had enhanced his own body. They rolled across the floor in a tangle of fur and limbs. Aldrich's hand caught her by the throat, and electricity crackled through his palm. Actual electricity, making Alara's muscles seize. She howled and twisted, broke free, scrambled back. Aldrich stood, brushing dust from his coat. "Impressive. You're adapting faster than predicted. The stress response is accelerating your bloodline awakening." He sounded pleased. "Perfect. This will make the harvesting so much more valuable." "Harvesting?" Kael stepped forward, human now, naked and furious. "What the fuck are you talking about?" "Her bone marrow, spinal fluid, genetic material." Aldrich said it like he was discussing the weather. "The silver wolf traits are encoded in specific stem cell lines. extract and cultivate them properly, and I can create an entire generation of enhanced wolves, controllable ones. Horror rippled through the watching crowd. Even the alphas who'd been skeptical of Alara looked sickened. "You're insane," Rhea said. "I'm practical." Aldrich's mercury eyes gleamed. "The wolf world is changing. Humans encroach on territory. Old ways fail. We need strength to survive, and I'm providing it." "By butchering her?" Kale's voice was deadly quiet. "By using available resources efficiently." Kale shifted, and his black wolf was rage incarnate. He moved so fast Alara barely tracked it, jaws aimed for Aldrich's head. But Aldrich twisted impossibly, that enhanced body bending in ways biology shouldn't allow, and his hand caught Kael's throat mid-lunge. The electricity that crackled this time was worse. Kale convulsed, went limp, collapsed in a heap. "Kale!" Alara's scream tore from her throat. She started forward, but Rhea grabbed her scruff, held her back. "He's breathing," Rhea said through the link. "Unconscious but alive. Don't give Aldrich what he wants." Aldrich crouched beside Kael's unconscious form, checking his pulse with clinical detachment. "He'll recover. The neural shock is temporary." He stood, faced Alara. "But next time I'll use lethal voltage. Your choice. Come with me voluntarily, or I start killing everyone in this room until you comply." Alara's wolf wanted to fight, wanted to tear into Aldrich regardless of the cost, but she looked around the chamber, at wounded wolves, at Kael's still form, at Vera clutching her medical bag with white knuckles. If she fought and lost, Aldrich would still take her, and everyone here would die trying to stop him. If she surrendered, maybe she could buy time, find a weakness, escape later. It was a terrible plan, but it was the only plan she had. "Fine," Alara said, shifting back to human. "I'll go, but you leave everyone else alone." "Alara, no," Rhea started. "It's my choice." Alara cut her off, kept her eyes on Aldrich. "You get what you want. They get to live. Deal?" Aldrich studied her for a long moment. "Deal. Though I'm surprised. I expected more fight." "I'm practical too." Alara forced herself to walk toward him on shaking legs. "You want my cooperation, you don't hurt them." "Fair enough." Aldrich produced what looked like a metal collar from his coat. "This will suppress your wolf. Temporary measure until we reach my facility." The collar clicked around Alara's throat, and immediately she felt her wolf retreat, pushed down by whatever technology or magic the device used. The sensation was suffocating, like drowning, but she forced herself not to react. Aldrich gripped her arm. "We're leaving now. Anyone who follows dies." He moved toward the chamber doors, dragging Alara with him. She looked back once and caught Vera's eye, mouthed two words. "Moon blossom." Vera's nod was barely perceptible. Then they were through the doors, into corridors lit only by emergency lights. Aldrich moved fast, clearly familiar with Shadow Peak's layout. How long had he been planning this? How deep did his infiltration go? "You won't get away with this," Alara said. "I already have." Aldrich's grip on her arm was bruising. "My transport is 3 minutes away. We'll be across territorial lines before anyone organizes pursuit. Kael will come for me." "Let him try. My facility has defenses that would make a military base jealous." They reached an exterior door and cold wind hit Alara's naked skin. Snow was falling, thick and heavy. "By the time he finds us, I'll have extracted what I need. You'll still be alive. I'm not wasteful, but you'll be diminished." Alara's stomach turned, but she kept walking, kept cooperating, because in the distance she could hear something, a sound like thunder, but rhythmic, deliberate. Footsteps. Massive footsteps. Aldrich heard it too. He stopped, head tilting. "What?" The wall exploded inward. Not metaphorically. The stone wall 20 feet to their left detonated in a shower of debris and dust, and through the gap came a wolf that made Kael look small. Gray fur shot through with white, scars crisscrossing a face that had seen decades of battle, eyes the color of amber that held intelligence and fury in equal measure. Alpha Moira. And she'd brought friends. "The Council," Moira's voice rang through the pack link, "has voted unanimously. The charge against Alara Quinn is dismissed. Dr. Aldrich Thorne is declared enemy of the Northern Territories." She bared teeth like knives. "Surrender or die." Aldrich's laugh was sharp. "You think numbers matter? I've killed entire packs." He didn't finish. Moira hit him like a battering ram, and they went down in a tangle of claws and teeth. The collar around Alara's neck sparked, and suddenly her wolf was back, the suppression broken by the impact. She shifted instantly, scrambled away from the fight. More wolves poured through the breach in the wall, alphas and their guards, all converging on Aldrich, but he was holding them off. Impossibly, he was holding off 6 full-grown alphas with enhanced strength in those electric attacks. Wolves went flying, crashing into snow and stone. Then Vera appeared from a side corridor, running flat out, clutching a vial of something that glowed faintly blue. "Alara, catch!" She threw the vial. Alara caught it in her jaws, the glass cold against her tongue. Through the pack link, Vera's voice was urgent. "Concentrated moon blossom essence. Drink it and then bite him. Your saliva will carry it into his bloodstream. It counteracts enhancement serums." It was insane. It might not work. But Alara had built a life on insane choices that shouldn't work. She bit down on the vial. Glass shattered, and liquid fire poured down her throat. The taste was indescribable, sweet and bitter and burning all at once. Her wolf convulsed, power flooding through her like a dam breaking. And she grew. Not just larger, transformed. The silver of her fur blazed white gold, bright enough to cast shadows. Her muscles swelled, her claws extended, and when she roared, the sound was primal, ancient, something that hadn't been heard in 300 years. The true silver wolf, apex predator, awakened. Aldrich's head snapped toward her, and for the first time she saw fear in his mercury eyes. Alara charged. She was faster than thought, stronger than stone, and when she hit Aldrich, he didn't just stumble, he flew. Crashed through the wall behind him and into the courtyard beyond. She was on him before he could rise. Jaws closed around his enhanced arm, and she felt her teeth sink through whatever reinforcement he'd used, felt bone crack under the pressure. The moon blossom essence in her saliva burned into his bloodstream, and Aldrich screamed. His enhancements began to fail. She could see it happening, muscles shrinking back to normal size, skin losing that metallic sheen, the electricity flickering and dying. He was just a man, vulnerable, mortal. Alara's jaws moved toward his throat, and every instinct screamed at her to bite down, to end this, to make him pay for what he'd done to her mother, to her, to everyone he'd hurt. But she stopped, because killing him like this, in blind rage, would make her exactly what he'd tried to create, a monster without control. She shifted back, pinning him with a knee on his chest, hand around his throat. Blood ran from a dozen wounds on both of them, staining the snow red. "You wanted to study silver wolves?" Alara's voice was ragged. "Here's your lesson. We're not science experiments. We're not resources. We're people. And we decide our own fate." She looked up at the assembled alphas, at Moira, who watched with something like awe, at Rhea helping a groggy Kyle to his feet. "He's yours," Alara said. "Whatever justice the council decides." She stood, and her legs nearly gave out. The power that had flooded through her was receding, leaving exhaustion in its wake. But she remained upright, refused to fall. Kale reached her first, wrapping a cloak around her shoulders with hands that shook slightly. "You're insane," he said, but his voice was full of wonder. "You've mentioned that before." "I mean it more now." He pulled her close, and for a moment they just stood there, breathing, alive, while guards secured Aldrich with chains that looked heavy enough for a tank. Vera appeared, started examining Alara's wounds without asking permission. "You should be dead. That much moon blossom essence should have stopped your heart." "Apparently I'm hard to kill." "Apparently." Vera's smile was brief. "The water supply poisoning? We caught it in time. The essence you activated created a resonance effect. Every wolf in Shadow Peak felt it, woke up their wolves enough to fight off the Silver Shade. So everyone's okay. More than okay. You just saved 12,000 wolves." Vera's expression softened. "And proved what you are, beyond any doubt." Around them, wolves were gathering, not aggressive, cautious, reverent almost. Alpha Moira approached first, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of formal declaration. "The Council recognizes Alara Quinn as true-born Silver Wolf. Charges dismissed. Status elevated to Alpha class effective immediately." She inclined her head, a show of respect that sent ripples through the watching crowd. We were wrong about you. All of us. Other alphas echoed the sentiment, some grudging, others enthusiastic, but unanimous. Even Marcus, conscious now and being held by guards, looked at Alara with something that might have been fear or might have been respect. Sarah pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He told me it was for your own good, that you needed the poison to stay stable. Save it. Alara's voice was flat. You chose to believe him because it was easier than questioning orders. Own that. Sarah flinched but nodded. Rhea moved in, pulling the healer away before the conversation could deteriorate. Kale's hand found Alara's, fingers lacing together. The council wants a formal meeting to discuss alliance terms, reparations from Crescent Ridge, and, he paused, our mating bond. They want it officially recognized. Do I get a say in that? You get the only say. His silver eyes met hers. I'm asking, not demanding, stay with me. Not because of bonds or bloodlines or politics, but because I think we're stronger together than apart. Alara looked at their joined hands, at the blood and dirt and evidence of survival. A month ago she'd been dying in a frozen ravine, certain her life was over. Now she stood in a courtyard surrounded by alphas who'd declared her one of them, holding the hand of a king who looked at her like she was worth fighting for. I have conditions, she said. Kale's eyebrow arched. Of course you do. I want Crescent Ridge investigated. Every pack member questioned about the black market operation. Marcus and Sarah stand trial. Done. I want funding for Vera's research, proper labs, equipment, assistance. If there are other suppressed wolves out there, I want them found and helped. Done. And I want a voice in council decisions, not just as your mate, but as an alpha in my own right. Kale's smile was slow, genuine. That one might take negotiation. The other alphas are traditional. Then they can get untraditional. Alara squeezed his hand. Those are my terms. I accept them all. Anything else? Alara looked around the courtyard, at the wolves watching, at the mountains beyond, at the sky where dawn was just starting to break through clouds. Yeah, she said quietly. I want breakfast. Real breakfast. I'm starving. Kale's laugh echoed off stone walls, and some of the tension broke. Wolves began moving, heading back inside, already organizing cleanup and medical care. But Alara stayed where she was for another moment, watching the sun rise over the northern territory. Her territory now. She'd survived exile, poison, assassination attempts, and a mad scientist. She'd awakened a bloodline thought extinct. She'd proven herself to a council of alphas who'd written her off as worthless. And she'd done it not by being perfect, not by following rules, but by being stubborn, reckless, and refusing to quit even when quitting made sense. The girl they'd thrown away had become something they couldn't ignore. Kale tugged her hand gently. Come on, before you freeze to death after surviving everything else. That would be embarrassing. Deeply. They walked back toward the fortress together, and with every step, Alara felt the shift happening. Not in her wolf, that had already transformed. This was deeper. This was her understanding of who she was, what she'd become. She wasn't the weak Omega Crescent Ridge had named her. She wasn't a science experiment or a resource to be harvested. She was Alara Quinn, Silver Wolf, survivor, and soon, Queen. The sun broke through clouds fully, spilling gold across snow, and Alara smiled. The sun broke through clouds fully, spilling gold across snow, and Alara smiled. That smile lasted exactly as long as it took to reach the fortress entrance, where a guard intercepted them with news that drained the warmth from the morning. Your Majesty, the guard addressed Kale, breathless from running. We have a situation. Aldrich's transport. The vehicle that was supposed to extract him. It didn't leave. The driver's demanding to speak with you. Says he has information about other operatives in the territory. Kale's expression hardened. How many others? He won't say. Not until he gets immunity. The guard glanced at Alara. And he'll only talk if she's present. Of course. Because nothing could ever be simple. Give me 5 minutes to get dressed, Alara said. Then I'll be there. The guard nodded and retreated. Kyle started to follow, but Alara caught his arm. You don't have to do this now, he said quietly. You've been through enough today. If there are more people like Aldrich and Shadow Peak, I want them found before they try something else. Alara's jaw set. 5 minutes. Then we end this completely. She made it in 4, throwing on clothes that Rhea provided. Practical things. Reinforced fabric that wouldn't tear easily if she needed to shift. The shoulder wound from the earlier bite throbbed, but Vera had cleaned and stitched it quickly. It would heal. Everything healed, given time. The transport turned out to be an armored vehicle parked in the fortress's underground garage, all black metal and tinted windows. All. The driver stood beside it, hands raised in surrender, surrounded by a dozen guards with weapons trained on him. He was younger than Alara expected. Maybe 30, with dark hair and nervous eyes that tracked her approach. "You're the Silver Wolf," he said. Not a question. "I'm Alara Quinn. You wanted to talk?" "Ethan Morris, I drove transport for Aldrich's operation for 2 years." His voice shook slightly. "I thought we were doing medical research, helping wolves. I didn't know about the experiments, the forced harvesting, not until 3 months ago." "But you kept working for him," Kale observed. "He said he'd kill my sister if I didn't." Ethan's hands clenched. "She's in a pack 2 territories south. He had leverage." Alara studied him, trying to determine if he was lying. But his fear seemed genuine, and his scent carried the acrid tang of truth. "You said there are other operatives," she prompted. 4 that I know of. 3 are scientists working in different packs under false credentials, gathering genetic samples. The 4th... Ethan swallowed hard. "The 4th is here, in the Shadow Peak. Has been for 6 months, embedded in your staff." The garage went silent. Kale's fury was a tangible thing, pressure building in the air. "Name," he said, voice deadly quiet. "I don't know. Aldrich used code names for deep cover agents, but I know their assignment. They were supposed to get close to the King's inner circle. Gather intelligence on security, schedules, weaknesses." Rhea stepped forward. "How do we identify them?" "All of Aldrich's agents have the same modification, enhanced healing factor. It's subtle, but if you injure them, they recover faster than normal. Hours instead of days for minor wounds." Kale looked at Rhea. "Start testing. Everyone on staff, no exceptions. Use silver blades, small cuts, nothing permanent, but enough to measure healing rate." "That's 200 people," Rhea protested. "Then get started." Kale turned back to Ethan. "The other 3 scientists. Locations." Ethan rattled off pack names and descriptions. One of the guards immediately moved to make calls, coordinating with other territories. It would take time to verify, to extract these embedded agents, but the process was starting. "I've told you everything I know," Ethan said. "The immunity will be discussed after we verify your information." Kale gestured to the guards. "Detain him. Comfortable quarters, but supervised." As they led Ethan away, Vera appeared from the garage entrance, her expression grim. "We have a problem with Aldrich," she said. "He's not talking, won't say where his main facility is, won't give up other contacts, just sits there smiling like he knows something we don't." "Torture won't work," Alara said, thinking of the enhancements she'd seen. "He's modified his pain receptors, probably can't feel it the way normal wolves do." "Then what do you suggest?" Kael asked. Alara thought about it, about what would break someone like Aldrich, someone who viewed wolves as resources and experiments as progress. What would matter to a man who'd built his identity on being smarter than everyone else? "Let me talk to him," she said. "Alone." The suggestion was met with immediate resistance. Kael argued, Rhea argued, even Vera looked skeptical, but Alara held firm, and eventually they relented, with conditions. She'd be in a secure cell, guards outside, weapons available if needed. Aldrich had been moved to the fortress's detention level, a series of reinforced cells deep underground. He sat on a metal bench, hands shackled with silver-lined restraints that prevented shifting. His wounds from the fight had been treated but not healed, part of his punishment, maybe, or just efficiency. He looked up when Alara entered, and his smile was the same as before, confident, amused. "Come to gloat?" he asked. "Come to offer you a choice." Alara pulled up a chair, sat facing him through the bars. "You can tell us where your main facility is, give us access codes, help us shut down your operation completely, or you can stay silent and watch it happen anyway." Aldrich laughed. "You think you can find it? I've been building that facility for 15 years. It's hidden, fortified, and staffed with loyal people who won't betray me. Loyal or scared? Alara leaned forward.
Because
Because from what I've seen, you don't inspire loyalty. You inspire fear, and fear breaks the moment the threat is removed. I'm not removed. I'm temporarily detained. You're finished. Alara's voice was flat. Your enhancements are gone. Your network is being dismantled. Ethan's already given us names and locations. How long do you think the others will hold out once they realize you can't protect them anymore? Something flickered across Aldrich's face. Not fear, but close. Uncertainty. You built your entire operation on being untouchable, Alara continued, on wolves being too afraid or too ignorant to stop you. But I stopped you. A woman you tried to turn into a lab experiment fought back and won. What does that say about your methods? It says you're an outlier, statistical anomaly. It says you underestimated me, just like you underestimate everyone you experiment on. Alara stood. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to find your facility with or without your help. We're going to free every wolf you've imprisoned there, and we're going to expose what you've done to every pack in the territory. They'll call me a visionary eventually, Aldrich said. History favors those who push boundaries. History remembers monsters as monsters. Alara moved toward the door, then paused. You wanted to study silver wolves? Here's your final lesson. We don't break. We don't surrender. And we sure as hell don't let people like you win. She left him there, sitting in his cell with his confidence fractured and felt no satisfaction, just exhaustion. Cale was waiting outside. Did he tell you anything? No, but he will. Alara leaned against the wall, suddenly aware of how much her body hurt. Fear works both ways. Once his people start flipping, once he realizes he's truly alone, he'll talk. And if he doesn't, then we find the facility the hard way. She pushed off the wall. But right now, I need food and sleep, in that order. The fortress's main dining hall was chaos. Word had spread about the attack, about Alara's transformation, about the council's recognition. Wolves packed the space, talking in excited clusters, and when Alara entered with Kael, conversation stopped. Then someone started clapping. It spread through the hall like wildfire. Applause, cheers, wolves stamping feet in traditional pack celebration. Alara stood frozen, overwhelmed, until Kael's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. They're celebrating you, he said quietly. I know, it's weird. His laugh was soft. You'll get used to it. They found seats at the high table, and food appeared. Actual mountains of it, prepared by kitchen staff who'd apparently decided that feeding the silver wolf required enough calories for a small army. Alara ate mechanically, too hungry to taste much, while around her the celebration continued. Alpha Moira approached midway through the meal, her expression serious despite the festive atmosphere. May I speak with you both? She asked. Kael gestured to an empty chair. Of course. Moira sat, and her next words were pitched low enough that only they could hear. The council met while you were interrogating Aldrich. We've made some decisions that affect you both. Alara's stomach clenched. What kind of decisions? Crescent Ridge Pack is being dissolved. Alpha Marcus will stand trial for conspiracy, poisoning, and attempted murder. Those found guilty of participating in the black market operation will face individual charges. Pack members who were unaware will be absorbed into neighboring territories. It was harsh but fair. Alara nodded. And Sarah? She's cooperating fully, providing evidence, names, transaction records. Her sentence will depend on how useful that information proves. Moira's gaze shifted to Alara. She asked to speak with you, personally. You're not obligated to agree. Alara thought about it. Part of her wanted to refuse, to let Sarah rot with her guilt. But another part, the part that had spent years being dismissed and ignored, understood the importance of being heard. I'll see her, Alara said. After this is finished, after everything's settled. Moira inclined her head. The council also voted on another matter regarding your status. I thought that was already decided, Alpha class recognition. It was, but several Alphas felt that wasn't sufficient given your bloodline and your role in stopping Aldrich. Moira's expression was unreadable. They're proposing you be granted territorial authority, a domain of your own within Northern Territory. Alara's mind blanked. What? It's traditional for silver wolves, Moira explained. Historical records show they were given autonomous territories, ruling independently but aligned with larger kingdoms. The council believes reviving that tradition would be appropriate. I don't want to rule anyone, Alara said immediately. I barely know how to rule myself. You saved 12,000 wolves yesterday. You stopped a threat that could have crippled the entire territory. You fought a mad scientist to a standstill and won. Moira's smile was slight. You're already ruling, whether you acknowledge it or not. The council just wants to make it official. Kael had been silent through this exchange, but now he spoke. What territory are they proposing? The Eastern Ranges. 3 towns, maybe 800 wolves. It's resource-rich, but has been without permanent leadership for 2 years. Needs someone strong enough to rebuild. Moira looked at Alara. You'd have full autonomy. Answer to no one, except in matters affecting the broader territory. It was everything Alara had never dared want. A place to belong, people to protect. Authority earned through action, not birthright. It was also terrifying. I need time to think about it, she said. Take all the time you need. The council won't force this. Moira stood. But know that the offer is genuine. You've earned it 10 times over. After she left, Kael turned to Alara. What are you thinking? That a month ago I was dying in a ravine. Now people want to give me a territory. Alara shook her head. It doesn't feel real. It's real, and you'd be good at it. You don't know that. I know you fought for people who'd given you no reason to care about them. I know you made impossible choices and survived impossible odds. Kael's hand covered hers. That's what leadership is. Not being perfect, but showing up when it matters. Alara looked at their joined hands, at the calluses and scars that marked both. If I accept, would we? She paused, uncertain how to phrase it. Would we what? Would we still be this? She gestured between them. Or would having my own territory change things? Kael's expression softened. The mate bond doesn't care about territory or politics. You could rule the Eastern Ranges, and I'd still be yours. Still want you beside me when the day ends. He raised her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The only thing that changes is you'd have more responsibilities to balance. That's supposed to make this easier? No, but it's the truth. He smiled. And you've never been one to shy away from hard truths. The celebration continued around them, but Alara felt the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. A territory. People depending on her. The chance to build something that mattered. It was everything she'd never imagined, and exactly what she'd been preparing for without knowing it. I'll do it, she said quietly. Accept the council's offer. Kael's smile was brilliant. Yeah? Yeah. But I'm making changes. Things are going to run differently in my territory. I'd expect nothing less. He stood, pulling her up with him, and addressed the hall. Alara Quinn has accepted the council's offer of territorial authority over the Eastern Ranges. The celebration intensified, cheers shaking the rafters. Wolves surged forward, offering congratulations, pledging support. It was overwhelming and humbling and absolutely exhausting. But Alara stood through it, accepting handshakes and embraces, feeling the shift happening in real time, from outcast to alpha, from victim to leader. The night wore on. Eventually the crowds thinned, wolves returning to their duties or homes. Alara found herself standing on a balcony overlooking Shadow Peak, the valley below glittering with lights, and finally had a moment to breathe. Vera joined her, carrying 2 glasses of something that smelled strong. Thought you could use this, Vera said, handing over a glass. Alara took it, sipped, and coughed. What is this? Traditional northern whiskey. Burns going down, but it's good for nerves. Vera leaned on the balcony rail. Hell of a day. Understatement of the century. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching snow begin to fall. I analyzed your blood after the fight, Vera said eventually. The transformation you underwent, the white gold wolf, that's not something that can be suppressed again. Your bloodline's fully active now. Is that good or bad? Depends on how you use it. Vera glanced at her. You're going to be powerful, Alara. More powerful than most alphas. That comes with responsibility and risk. I'm aware. Are you? Vera's voice was serious. Because power attracts enemies. People who want to study you, control you, or eliminate you as a threat. Aldrich won't be the last. Alara had already thought about that, about the target she'd painted on her back by revealing what she was. But hiding hadn't kept her safe. Weakness hadn't protected her. "Let them come," she said. "I'm done running." Vera's smile was fierce. "Good. Because I'm staying with you, chief healer for your territory, if you'll have me." "You'd leave Kael's service?" "He's got plenty of healers. You're building something new. I want to be part of it." Vera raised her glass. "To new beginnings." Alara clinked her glass against Vera's. "To surviving long enough to see them." They drank, and the whiskey burned, but it was a good burn. Clean. The next morning brought news that Aldrich had started talking. Faced with the reality that 3 of his scientists had been captured and were providing detailed testimony, he'd cracked. Given up the facility's location, access codes, the names of everyone involved. Kael organized a raid immediately, taking a strike force of 50 wolves to a location 3 territories south. Alara wanted to go, but Kael insisted she stay, partly for safety, partly because there was work to be done in Shadow Peak. The eastern ranges needed assessment. She needed to meet the wolves who'd be under her authority, understand their needs, their concerns. Moira offered to accompany her, lending legitimacy to the transition. The eastern territories were beautiful, rugged mountains giving way to valleys thick with pine, rivers cutting through landscapes that looked untouched. The towns were small but well-maintained, and the wolves who lived there were cautiously optimistic about new leadership. "Previous Alpha abandoned us after his mate died," one elder explained during a community meeting. "Left us to fend for ourselves. We've managed, but it's been hard." "What do you need most?" Alara asked. The answers varied. Better medical facilities, improved trade routes, protection from rogues who'd been testing the borders, educational opportunities for young wolves. Alara listened to all of it, taking notes, asking questions. These weren't abstract problems to solve. These were people's lives, and she was responsible for improving them. It was daunting. It was exhilarating. It was hers. 3 days later, Kael returned with news that the raid had been successful. They'd found Aldrich's facility hidden in an abandoned mining complex, rescued 14 wolves who'd been held against their will, and seized decades' worth of research data. "Some of them were in bad shape," Kael said, his expression grim. "Malnourished, traumatized. Vera's working with them now, but recovery will take time." "Did any of them have information about other operations?" "A few. We're following up on leads." He pulled Alara close, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "But the main threat's contained. Aldrich's network is shattered." Alara held him, feeling the tension slowly drain. "What happens to him now?" "Trial in 2 weeks. Public, with representatives from every pack in the territory. The council wants transparency." Kael's arms tightened around her. "He'll be executed. There's no question about the verdict." Part of Alara felt she should object, argue for mercy. But she thought about her mother, about the wolves rescued from that facility, about the years stolen from her, and couldn't find sympathy. Some people earn death. The trial, when it came, was brutal and brief. Evidence was overwhelming. Aldrich showed no remorse, used his final statement to argue that his work was necessary for wolf evolution. The council deliberated for 15 minutes and returned with a unanimous guilty verdict. He was executed that same day. Alara didn't attend, but she felt it through the pack link, the moment his life ended, the collective exhale of relief from hundreds of wolves. Justice wasn't always clean, but sometimes it was necessary. Sarah's trial came a week later. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy and poisoning, threw herself on the council's mercy. The evidence she'd provided had been instrumental in taking down the black market operation, and several alphas argued for leniency. Alara was called to provide a victim impact statement. She stood before the council, facing Sarah for the first time since the fight, and found she didn't feel the rage she'd expected, just tired sadness. "You had a choice," Alara said. "Every time you handed me that tea, every time you smiled and pretended to care, you could have chosen differently. Could have told someone, refused, done anything except actively participate in poisoning me." Sarah was crying, but Alara felt no sympathy. "You don't get to hide behind following orders," Alara continued. "You knew it was wrong. You did it anyway. And now you have to live with that." The council sentenced Sarah to 20 years' service in a medical facility, specifically the rehabilitation center being established for rescued wolves. She'd spend 2 decades treating the kind of damage she'd helped inflict. Poetic justice, Moira called it. Marcus's trial was scheduled for the following month, but Alara didn't plan to attend. He was a footnote now, a chapter closed. Her focus was forward. The eastern ranges needed her. 2 months after being thrown into the rift, Alara stood on a platform in the central square of Ridgetown, largest of the 3 towns in her new territory, and addressed her people for the first time as their official alpha. "I won't lie to you," she said, voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "I'm new at this. I'm going to make mistakes, but I promise you this. I will fight for you the same way I fought for my own survival, with everything I have every day." The crowd was silent, watching, judging. "I know what it's like to be dismissed," Alara continued, "to be told you don't matter, that your voice doesn't count. That ends here. Everyone in this territory gets heard. Everyone gets a chance to contribute." She outlined her plans: medical improvements, trade expansion, education programs, practical things that would make tangible differences in daily life. When she finished, there was a moment of uncertainty. Then one wolf started clapping. Another joined. Soon the entire square was filled with applause and cheers. They believed in her, or at least they were willing to give her a chance. That was enough. Kyle attended the ceremony, standing to the side with Rhea and Vera, and afterward he pulled Alara aside. "That was good," he said. "Natural. You didn't sound like you were trying too hard." "I wasn't trying at all, just saying what needed to be said." Alara looked out at the dispersing crowd. "Think I can actually do this?" "I know you can." Kyle's hand found hers. "And when it gets hard, and it will get hard, you've got support. Me, Vera, Rhea, the whole council if you need them." "The council that spent my first day questioning whether I deserve to breathe? People change. You changed them." He smiled. "Besides, Moira's been singing your praises to anyone who'll listen. You've got a powerful ally there." They walked through Ridgetown as evening fell, watching lights come on in windows, hearing the sounds of a community settling in for the night. It was peaceful. Normal. Alara had almost forgotten what normal felt like. "I need to tell you something," Kyle said as they reached the territorial border where his land met hers. "About the mate bond." Alara's stomach flipped. "Okay. We've been bonded for months now, but you've been recovering, dealing with crises, establishing your territory. I haven't pushed because the timing never felt right." He turned to face her fully. "But I'm pushing now. I want to complete the bond, make it official in every sense." The mate bond completion ceremony was sacred, permanent, binding 2 wolves together for life. It was also intimate, requiring a level of trust and vulnerability that terrified Alara, even as part of her wanted it desperately. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of me? Of losing myself. Of giving up the independence I just got back." She met his eyes. "I've spent my whole life having choices made for me. The bond feels like another choice taken away." Kyle was quiet for a moment. "The bond doesn't take away choice. It adds connection. You'd still be you, still rule your territory, still make your own decisions. You'd just have someone standing beside you through it. What if I'm bad at it, the whole mate thing? Then we'll be bad at it together and figure it out as we go." His smile was soft. "Alara, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to try." She thought about the past months, about how Kyle had supported without smothering, challenged without diminishing, trusted her when no one else did, about how his presence felt like coming home. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." The ceremony was held under the full moon a week later, witnessed by both councils and every wolf who could make the journey. Traditional, formal, everything Alara had never wanted. But standing across from Kyle, speaking vows that bound them together, she found it didn't matter. The ceremony was for everyone else. What mattered was the moment the bond snapped into place fully, a connection so profound it felt like gaining a new sense. She could feel Kyle's presence constantly now, a steady warmth at the edge of her consciousness, could sense his emotions, his thoughts if he let her, his absolute certainty that this was right. And instead of feeling trapped, she felt amplified, stronger together than apart. The celebration after was massive. 3 territories worth of wolves gathering to honor the bond and the alliance it represented. Alara danced until her feet hurt, ate until she was stuffed, and finally escaped to a quiet balcony where she could breathe. Kale found her there, as she'd known he would. Too much? He asked. Just enough. Alara leaned against him. But I'm ready for it to be over. We can leave whenever you want. They slipped away quietly, heading back to Shadow Peak, where rooms had been prepared for them. The fortress felt different now, not like Kael's home that she was visiting, but genuinely shared space. I have something for you, Kael said once they were alone. He retrieved a wooden box from a drawer, aged and polished smooth. This belonged to your mother. Alara's hands trembled as she took it. How? I had people searching through Aldrich's seized materials, found this among items he'd stolen from her. Kael's expression was gentle. I thought you should have it. Inside the box were photos, letters, a journal with pages filled in elegant handwriting, her mother's life preserved. Alara traced the words with shaking fingers, reading about a woman who'd loved fiercely, fought harder, and died too young. A woman who'd hidden her daughter to protect her, who'd sacrificed everything to give Alara a chance at survival. She'd be proud of you, Kael said quietly. You didn't know her. I know you, and anyone who raised someone that stubborn and strong did something right. Alara laughed through tears. That's the nicest insult I've ever received. She spent the night reading her mother's words, learning about the woman she'd come from, about silver wolf traditions, about power used responsibly, about the importance of choosing your own path. By dawn, she'd finished the journal and understood something fundamental. Her mother hadn't died in vain. Every choice she'd made, every sacrifice, had led to Alara surviving, growing, becoming someone who could stand against people like Aldrich and win. The broken girl thrown into the rift was gone. In her place stood a queen, scarred, imperfect, but unbreakable. 6 months after the trial, Alara stood on the same balcony where she'd first looked out over Shadow Peak and marveled at how much had changed. The eastern ranges thrived. Medical facilities had been upgraded, trade routes established. A school had opened in Ridgetown, teaching young wolves not just survival, but history, science, art. She'd made mistakes, plenty of them, made decisions that backfired, trusted the wrong people, pushed too hard on initiatives that needed more time. But she'd learned from each failure, adjusted, tried again. That was leadership, not perfection, but persistence. Kael joined her as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of gold and pink. Vera wants to expand her research program, he said. She's found 2 more wolves with suppressed bloodlines, wants funding to help them. Approve it, whatever she needs. Alara leaned into him. Anyone who's been suppressed deserves a chance to be whole. I'll tell her, his arm wrapped around her waist. The council's discussing a continental summit, representatives from territories across the continent gathering to address rogue threats and establish unified laws. That sounds like months of politics and arguing. It does, but it's necessary. He paused. They want you there, as a representative. A year ago, the thought would have paralyzed her. Now, Alara just nodded. When? Next spring. Gives you time to prepare. They stood in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars emerged. Somewhere below, wolves were living lives made better by the choices Alara had fought to make. Children were growing up without fear of suppression. The broken were being healed. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was better. And better was enough. Do you ever think about where you'd be if Marcus hadn't thrown you in that rift? Kael asked. Alara considered it. Probably dead. Or still poisoned, still believing I was worthless. She looked up at him. Why? Because part of me wants to thank him for being stupid enough to give you to me. Kael's smile was wry. Though I'd never actually thank him, he's still an asshole. The biggest asshole. Alara's laugh was soft. But yeah, if he hadn't tried to kill me, I wouldn't have found this. Found you, found myself. Funny how the worst moments can lead to the best outcomes. Funny's one word for it. They stayed there until the cold drove them inside, until duty called them to meetings and decisions and the endless work of ruling. But in that moment, standing under stars with the mate bond humming between them, Alara felt something she'd never expected to feel. Peace. Not the absence of struggle. There would always be struggles. always be challenges to face. But the certainty that she could face them, that she was strong enough, smart enough, stubborn enough to handle whatever came. The girl they'd thrown away had become the woman they couldn't ignore. The outcast had become the queen. And the story that started with exile in frozen darkness ended with Alara Quinn standing in the light she'd fought to create, ready for whatever came next. Because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Survival wasn't about being unbreakable. It was about breaking and choosing to rebuild yourself stronger each time. And Alara had rebuilt herself into something extraordinary. The Continental Summit arrived with spring thaw, bringing representatives from 12 territories to neutral ground in the Cascade Mountains. Alara had prepared for months, studied territorial histories, memorized political alliances, rehearsed arguments with Kael until they could debate policy in their sleep. None of it prepared her for the reality. The summit hall was intimidating by design, vaulted ceilings carved with the history of wolfkind, tables arranged in concentric circles to emphasize hierarchy. The innermost circle held the most powerful alphas, those who controlled vast territories and commanded thousands. The outer circles descended in importance until you reached the observers, those allowed to watch but not speak. Alara had been placed in the second circle, a statement of respect, but also a reminder that she was new, untested despite everything she'd accomplished. She could feel eyes tracking her as she entered, heard the whispers, Silver Wolf, Aldrich's victim, Kael's mate. They saw her as curiosity, anomaly, or threat depending on who was looking. Let them look. She'd survived worse than judgment. The first 3 days were procedural, territorial boundary disputes, trade agreement negotiations, resource allocation debates. Alara listened more than she spoke, learning the rhythms of continental politics, identifying who held real power versus who just held titles. On the fourth day, the topic shifted to enhanced wolves and genetic experimentation. Aldrich's operation was dismantled, an alpha from the Western Territories said, his voice carrying accusation. But the knowledge he generated still exists. Research data, genetic sequences, enhancement formulas. What's being done to ensure this doesn't happen again? All eyes turned to Alara. She stood slowly, feeling the weight of attention. The data seized from Aldrich's facility has been secured. My head healer, Vera Castellan, is conducting analysis to identify victims and reverse damage where possible. The enhancement formulas have been destroyed. All of them? Another alpha challenged. Or just the ones you deem dangerous? All of them, Alara said firmly. Enhancement through forced genetic modification is slavery dressed up as science. We're not preserving that knowledge. We're burying it. Some would argue that voluntary enhancement should remain an option, the Western Alpha pressed. That wolves should have the right to improve themselves through scientific means. Voluntary is a fantasy when power imbalances exist, Alara countered. Aldrich's victims didn't volunteer, they were coerced, manipulated, or outright kidnapped. Any system that allows enhancement will be abused by those with resources and influence. So your solution is to ban all genetic research? The challenge came from a younger alpha, her tone sharp. Restrict scientific progress because of one bad actor? My solution is accountability. Alara's voice hardened. Research that involves living subjects requires oversight, consent, and consequences for violations. Not just policies, actual enforcement with teeth. The debate continued for hours, positions entrenching, tempers flaring. But when the vote came, Alara's proposal passed. A continental ban on non-consensual genetic experimentation, with an oversight committee to monitor research and investigate violations. It wasn't perfect. Enforcement would be challenging, loopholes would be found. But it was a start. That night, Kael found her on the terrace overlooking the valley, nursing a drink and processing the day. "You made enemies today," he said, settling beside her. "I made the right call," Alara replied. "Whether it was popular doesn't matter. It matters for politics." "Then I'm bad at politics." She sipped her drink. "I can live with that." Kael's laugh was soft. "You're not bad at it. You're just honest. In a world full of calculated moves and careful words, honesty is revolutionary." Revolutionary sounds exhausting. It is, but someone has to do it. He took her hand. "I'm proud of you, in case I haven't said that recently. You say it constantly, because it's constantly true." Alara leaned her head on his shoulder, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring more debates, more challenges, more opportunities to prove herself or fail spectacularly. But tonight, she was just a woman sitting with her mate, breathing the mountain air, existing without having to fight for the right to do so. The summit concluded a week later with agreements on rogue management, cross-territorial cooperation, and the genetic research ban. Alara signed her name to documents that would shape wolf society for generations, and felt the weight of responsibility settled deeper. This was her life now. Not just surviving, but shaping the future. On the journey back to her territory, Vera rode beside her, unusually quiet. "Something on your mind?" Alara asked. "I've been thinking about the rescued wolves from Aldrich's facility," Vera said. "Most are recovering well physically, but the psychological damage—" She trailed off. "They need more than medical care. They need purpose. Community. What are you suggesting?" "A sanctuary, specifically for wolves recovering from experimentation or suppression. A place where they can heal without judgment, learn to trust again." Vera's eyes met hers. "I want to build it in your territory. With your permission." Alara didn't hesitate. "You have it. Whatever resources you need." Vera's smile was brilliant. "We're going to change things, aren't we?" "We already have," Alara said. "But yeah, we're just getting started." The eastern ranges came into view as they crested the final mountain pass, and Alara felt something loosen in her chest. Home. This was home now, in a way Crescent Ridge had never been. She'd built this. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but built it nonetheless. The girl who'd been thrown into a frozen ravine had clawed her way out of death and into a life worth living, had transformed from victim to survivor to leader. The journey had broken her in 1,000 ways, but every break had been an opportunity to rebuild herself stronger. And standing here looking out over her territory with people she loved beside her, and a future she'd fought to create spreading before her, Alara Quinn finally understood what her mother had tried to tell her in those journal pages. Power wasn't about being unbreakable. It was about choosing to keep going when breaking would be easier. And Alara would keep going, keep fighting, keep building, for as long as it took to make the world a place where no wolf ever had to smile defiantly in the face of death, just to prove they weren't afraid. She'd rewritten her story from exile to empire, and she was far from finished.